I was born in Jerusalem, 6 generations. My grandparents, they reached here from Yugoslavia many hundreds of years ago. I don't exactly know. I grew up in Jerusalem, and then we moved to Tel Aviv. My parents, or my grandparents as well, they were very Zionists. My grandfather, my father's father, was from Hebron. He was there during the massacre that the Arabs made to the Jews in Hebron, 1929. I'm sorry. 1929, and he nearly escaped from that massacre. I went to school in the old city of Jerusalem, in a French school, which is called Collège des Frères, and there I learned languages. We moved to Tel Aviv. And in Tel Aviv, I was in the Betar Youth. Betar Youth, it was the that our leader, Zev Jabotinsky, he was the leader of that group, of the Betar, and there we had lectures about the condition of the Jews all over the world. And in 1939, when the war started, and we heard already what's happening to the Jews in Europe. And 1940, when the Germans conquered all of Europe, in France they created a puppet government called the Vichy government. All the overseas colonies of the French became overnight under the influence of the Germans. One morning we waked up here in the land of Israel. The worst enemy to the Jewish people, our northern gate, Syria and Lebanon. At the far, far south, Tunisia, Morocco, and Algeria. The Arabs around us, and the Arabs from the land of Israel, when they saw that Britain remained all by itself against Germany, they declared that they are on the German side. Even Sadat, if you don't recall, Sadat was the first Arab president in Egypt that signed peace treaty with Israel, was jailed by the British in Egypt, spying for the Germans. In Iraq, and he was in jail for many years. In Iraq, one of the leaders there, Rashid Ali al-Kulani, declared unity against the British and said he's going to put in position of the Germans the airfields and the oil fields. The British that feared that after conquering all of Europe, the Germans will invade England, because in 2 hours they could go through the British Channel. And they took forces out of the Middle East to defend England. Here in the land of Israel, we stayed with no forces of defense. At that moment, the British gave the green light to the Haganah organizations. I did mention there have been 3 organizations that struggled against the British: the Haganah, the Irgun, and the Lehi, which is the staying group. He gave the Haganah organization the green light to create the Palmach unit, the storm unit. Their duties, if God forbid the Germans will get here, there'll be the guerrillas to fight behind the lines. We were in the land of Israel at the time about 500,000 Jews. We'll concentrate ourselves in the mountains of Carmel, and there we stand against the German. If God forbid the Germans get it. Thank God it didn't happen. From the leader of the Irgun, at the time it was David Raziel, the British asked to go to Iraq and help them to crush the immunity of Rashid Ali al-Kilani. The headquarters accepted in condition: give us a free hand to look and locate and bring to justice Hajj Amil Husseini, the great Mufti of Jerusalem. He made one hand with the Germans. He had headquarters in Berlin. He recruited Muslims all over the world, especially in Yugoslavia, and he made Muslim units in the German army. Permission was handed. Our leader, David Raziel, with second in command, Yaakov Meridor, both may rest in peace. They were at the head of the Irgun group to Iraq to help the Germans, to help the British to crush the mutiny of Rashid al-Kilani. At the meantime, Rommel and his armies are advancing toward Egypt. News came here how the Germans are treating the Jews. We, the youth from the Betar organization, we said, what can we do? They're very, very close to us. I said to my friends there, let's join the British Army. I said, you crazy, you will accept, we are children. That will force the date in our birth certificate on join the British Army. Only two of us, me and another guy named Eli Shitrit, we forced the date and we went to join the British Army. When we came at the gate of recruiting office, there was a military police at the gate. He says, hey boys, where do you think you're going? I said, to the army, sir. He looks at us, me, he says, you in. To my friend, he says, you back to kindergarten, because he looked very childish. And I joined the British Army, and I was trained by the British. And in 1941, the 9th Australian Division got here. On June 1941, we invaded Syria and Lebanon to abolish the danger from the north. At the head of the advancing forces, there were scouts from the Haganah organization. Between them was Moshe Dayan, may rest in peace. He lost his eye in this operation. For me, it was my first combat experience, but not my last. I wasn't 15 years old yet. Syria and Lebanon was conquered. We feel freely from the north. In Iraq, the immunity was crushed. Few German airplanes were escaping to safe places for them. On the way, everything British they saw, they bombed, and there was a direct hit on a car. Our leader, David Radil, was on it, and he was killed instantly in Iraq. At the meantime, Rommel and his armies reached the borders of El Alamein, borders between Libya and Egypt. Only God knows what stopped them there. Some believe the logistics were bad. Some say that tanks couldn't hold at the Libyan desert. And many believe the finger of God was to stop them. If they would have advanced, in 2 days they would have been here and destroyed all what we built until then. All the Eretz Israel, all the from the land of the groups, the units of the land of Israel were transferred to Egypt. Me in Egypt, I was transferred from our Eretz Israelian unit to a British unit. 6.5 years I was in the British Army. 3 years I was in a British unit. I ate, I drank, I adopted all the manners in swearing and blessing. I was one of them, and it helped a lot to the underground later on. I took part in fighting with the 8th Army of General Montgomery against Rommel and his armies. From El Alamein, I reached until Tunisia. From Tunisia, I took part in the invasion of Sicily in the south of Italy. I was wounded in my arm and behind my ear. They took me with an hospital ship from Sicily to Tripoli, and there I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital. I received a letter from my mother in Jerusalem. The letter is fluffy. That what my mother would send me a fluffy letter. I open it, lots of herbs there inside. I read the letter. She says, I dreamed that you were injured. I went to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, and I took herbs from the wall, put them in the place you were wounded, see everything will be all right. I took the herbs, I put it in, I had plaster all over my arm, I put it in with a knife, it scratched me, it gave me hell. Thank God my arm is like steel till today from the medicine that my mother sent me from Jerusalem. I came back here, and I took part in the struggle against the British at the same time that I'm in the British Army. The British didn't know what they're preparing me for. We started our unity in 1943. It was before, but when the war was declared, the Irgun stopped the fighting against the British. And 1941, sorry, 39, 1940, our leader, Menachem Begin, declared immunity against the British. He says the youth in the land of Israel will take up arms and will fight until the state of Israel will be an Hebrew state. At the time, we never said Israel. An Hebrew state will be created. But we'll prevent ourselves not to fight against the British army as long as the war is going on in Germany. Only against the British regime here, the police stations and the headquarters of the Palestine government, which were all British on them. And we started our struggle against them. I took part in many operations against those because I was very, very educated in fighting by the British. They didn't know what they were preparing me for. And when the war was over, we started fighting against the British as well. Against the British army, sorry. They brought here the 6th Airborne Division. And they gave us hell. But we overcome them because we had no choice. And the British starting setting our people to death by hanging. And they also whipped our people, whip in their back. They are going made notices all over the country in the wars. At night we used to put notices. We noticed the British said, if you want that humiliating punishment by flogging, by whipping, every British officer will be flogged in Eretz Israel. One of the British soldiers wrote in those notices on the wall, he said, please don't forget to get my sergeant major, that will whip his sergeant major as well. And guys went out, groups of 5, and in every town, they caught British officers, they undressed them, and they whipped them in the back and sent them only with panties. Imagine what does to the big British Empire. They whip the natives all over, and here the natives whip them. It was terrible. In England, they raised voices and said, what are we doing in that bloody country, they said. And here we paid a high price for that, because the 5 guys in Petah Tikva, it's a town in the north of Tel Aviv, didn't find any British officers. They decided to go on the way to the airport. Maybe they'll find British officers. On the way, there was a roadblock. When they saw the roadblock, they made a U-turn to escape. They fired them. They hit the driver in the shoulder. And the car stopped. When the British saw that there is, the British searched the car, they found the whip. The moment they found the whip, they beat them to death. The driver died from the beating. 1 was underage, was sentenced to life imprisonment. 3, Dresner, Kashani, and Al-Kahi, they were sentenced to be hanged. And they were hanged as thieves in the night. Why I say thieves in the night? Because they were hanged together with Dov Gruner. And why I say thieves in the night? Because before, when somebody is sentenced, before executed, they used to call the families to depart from them, and they used to call a rabbi. They didn't call rabbi, they didn't call the families, they execute them without notice. And this was terrible. And Begin told them, hangings will go by hangings. If you won't stop hanging our guys, we'll hang British officers. And they didn't notice. They continued to hang. We went out and we caught 5 British officers, a colonel, There was an officers' club in Ayalkon Street in Tel Aviv. I was disguised as captain in this operation, but there isn't such young officer in the British Army. How they made me look older. They stuck me a big mustache. They stuck it so well that it won't fall during the operation. After the operation, when I took out the mustache, I nearly took my lip out, so good they stuffed it. And we looked for British officers, we couldn't find them. They hid themselves in camps. They went out only in large convoys. Our intelligence found out in the town of Netanya, which is in the north of Tel Aviv, there's a few days, two civil British going from one coffee shop to another. We looked for them, we found them. It turned out to be that there were two sergeants in the British intelligence. We made them a trial as they made us, having guns without permit from us, and we sent them to death by hanging. And we told the British they'll hang our 3 guys, we'll hang those 2 guys. For the British, 2 British sergeants wasn't a big deal. They hanged our 2 guys, and we, with big sorrow, believe me, in the big sorrow, one of the forests in Netanya, we hanged those 2 sergeants. And like this, we broke the gallows. Until then, the British hanged 8 Irgun members in Acre, 2 Lehi members, steering group members in Cairo, and 2, one of the Irgun, Meir Feinstein and Moshe Barazani from the steering group, they blew themselves in the death cell before they were hanged. It was their own plan. They said, we want our soul will die with the enemies. They asked us to smuggle them hand grenades. We brought them in a basket of oranges. With 2 oranges were hidden 2 hand grenades. But the rabbi told them that he'll be with them in the last passes from the death row to the gallows. They begged him not to come. Said, no, I'll be with you. They didn't want to harm the rabbi. They blew themselves up before the rabbi and the executors came. There were no more hangings. From now on, when a guy fell in their hands, the British will tell him, you're too young to be hanged and too old to be whipped, and send him to life imprisonment. If we didn't take that measure of hanging those 2 poor British sergeants, that we didn't want it to, but we had no choice. Who knows how many youngsters would have been hanged until the British left this country. World War I, the Jews in this land helped the British with espionage. And the Turkish caught a few of them, they were hanged. Jews from this land, they were hanged in Syria. And they helped them, and the British in World War I, and there was Zev Jabotinsky made the Jewish Legion in the British Army, and together they fought to release this land from the Turks. The Turks were ruling here for 400 years before. And when the British got that land in 1917, Balfour, he was the foreign minister of England, Charles Balfour. Don't take my word if it was Charles Balfour. He declared that the British government realized that this land is by the Bible connected to the Jewish people, or the Jewish people are connected to this land, and will make a homeland for the Jews in Palestine. And the Jews were so happy. But the Jews in the world, they were very well contented. They didn't have Hitler didn't come when he had turned the power and that, and they didn't come by the millions here. We were very few here. And the land of Israel was supposed to be in both sides of the Jordan. And in 1922, the first betrayal from the British was that they cut the Eastern, Churchill, he was the foreign minister, he so-called the Zionist. He said it was the Zionist, he was a Zionist in that. And he cut the east part, 73% of our land, and he gave it to Prince Abdullah. Prince Abdullah, he was a prince from Saudi. He fought with his brothers, who will be the king there after the king died. He lost the battle and he escaped to Transjordan. And the British gave him a kingdom there. And we were not many Jews here, we couldn't do nothing. Now, the Jews didn't come so much here. But during the war, Jews started escaping from Europe. The British won't let them come here. They send them back. Many they send them back to Germany, and they were executed in the gas chambers. Every ship during the war, I don't know if you know, that all the big powers they bought or they leased or they took all the good ships. We Jews, we were looking for Jews to save Jews from Europe. All the scraps in the world they used to have. There were ships that they couldn't hold in high seas, and many were drowned because the British, they used to reach the borders of Palestine, of the land of Israel. They send them back to high seas, they won't let them in. And thousands of Jews were drowned because of that. And my brothers are knocking at the door to come in, and the British won't let them in. How could I sit at home and not fight against the British? And this is why we made the immunity against the British. Menachem Begin declared the immunity against the British. And the Irgun also made the illegal evacuation. First of all, the Irgun and Jabotinsky, they had an agreement with the Polish government that they will train 1,000 Jews from Europe, and the Polish government will give them arms and ships to land here, to take by force the land. And they trained them. Suddenly, the war was declared. So the Polish government, no, I need those troops here to defend. And we missed it. If the war would have started a year later or something, the land of Israel would have begun before the war. They would have landed here, and we were checked because here we were also trained against them. And that's why we fought against the British. We fought the British here, not out. The Stern Group said they declare war against the British Empire. We said, the Irgun said we declare war against the British regime only here, not any place else. And we took the activities against the British. My action was very, very, very British. I came back I left here in 1941 after the invasion of Syria and Lebanon. I came back here at late 43 after the invasion in Syria, in Sicily, and I was wounded, and I was in hospital for a while in Tripoli. I came back here and I took part in the operations of the Irgun at the same time that in the British Army. The Irgun was a poor organization. We hardly had money to eat. To buy arms, it was mission impossible. We had arms. How we used to get our arms? We used to disguise ourselves as the British Army, come to the camps at midday when all the troops are in the mess room, and we used to go to confiscate arms. Me, as my accent was very British, one of my duties was to locate British depots, British camps, arms depots. And I'm proud to say 90% of the operations, that the information I brought, we executed those raids and I took part in it. And we made many, many, many raids. And we made the raid in the largest camp of the British, called Saraf at the time. Nowadays, it's Rifin. The IDF is there. That camp has got three gates: Jaffa Gate, Jerusalem Gate, and Rishon Gate. Rishon is a town in the south of Italy, or south of Israel. And I was in the British Army at the time, and I had a girlfriend that she served in that camp. I used to come to visit him from time to time, from Rishon Gate. Once I came there, about 200 meters from the gate, on a parade grounds that been put a camp of tents. I look at that camp of tents and I see a different camp from there, the larger one, barbed wire. I realized that it was an arms tent. I didn't go for arms. I went to visit my girlfriend at that time. I went to see and I looked inside. My eyes blapped out to see so many arms. Rows of rifles, submachine guns, machine guns, lots of ammunition that we were short. And I look at the tent, look at the gate, and I say to myself, it's like eating a piece of cake to take those arms out from here. And fantasies we had, believe me, if it wasn't the fantasy, we couldn't hold against the British Empire. As if I hear those arms are talking Hebrew to me, said, Yoske, come and take us out from here. I started learning the camp. After I learned very well the camp, I went out. I brought the information to the to the operations of the Irgun. I told them what I saw. It has been decided that we're going there. You want all the story of that, or just what we made, how we got in and that? No, I mean how Amichai Pagin, this museum dedicated on his name, had been decided that he will come with me to see what all that information that I brought. Not that they didn't believe me, but he was chief of the storm units of the Irgun. He wanted to see by himself what it was. He was dressed as an army officer, disguised as army soldier. Me, as a British soldier. Me, I was a real British, in the British Army. We came, we gave the soldier's book at the time. They didn't have any picture. Military police, when he saw, so give me your soldier's book. He said, what's your name or what's your serial number? You have to reply immediately. Like this, he knew if you belong to this tab. And we used to discover ourselves British. We had to give them a soldier's book. It was hard. The name, it was all right to remember, but the number, it was terrible to remember. What you used to know, what you used to make that to do, that they remember the number. We used to write it here on the finger, just to glance down. It used to help her to remember them. It helped wonderful. The British never find out. Now I glance down, I hardly see my finger. That time I was young and I had a good vision. And we went in and we went to the tent camp. He looks at the tent, he looks at the gate, he looks around and said, Yoske, it's easier that you describe it. I said, I'm glad you think so. After a while, he said, I saw everything, let's go. I said, look, Giddy. In the British Army, there's a routine. If you come to a camp that is not yours, and you go, you don't, at midday, and you go to the mess room, and you don't go to the mess room to have lunch, something wrong with you. He said, if you say, you know. We went to the dining room, a large queue of British soldiers. I was one like them. My English was very British at the time. Said, we are passing by in the camp. Please let us have a messing. Messing, two aluminum plates that they fold one another. It was the routine. They lended us two messings, and we stood in the queue. Giddy, his head was working, looking all over. Nowadays, we could say that Giddy had a computer in his head. He drove mad the British with his ideas. And later on, the war independence, the Arabs. He drove mad with them. He had such ideas, it's impossible to. In 1940s, who knew what's a computer? We said he had ideas like a pomeranc in his head. Unfortunately, he was killed together with his wife. Also, she was on a Irgun fighter in a motor accident in 1978. We got the food, we sent down, said, Yoske, fantastic idea. First of all, we were having lunch on the expense of King George VI. Secondly, I've got a clear view of this operation going to take place, how many people. We went in at 12:15, and we left 1:30, and we decided that the best time to come to this camp is between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. There isn't a soul, all are in the dining room. We decided 12 guys will be disguised as paratroopers. And another guy, 13 guy, Tzvikeni Kishai, may rest in peace, he was killed with the IDF, serving in the IDF in Jerusalem in the war independence. He was also in the British Army at the time. He will get off near the camp, near the gate, with a kit bag as if he's hitchhiking, not hitchhiking, hitchhiking, yeah. As if he's hitchhiking. And if shoot starts in the camp, he has got to get hold of the military police at the gate. I was disguised as Sergeant Major in this operation. A Sergeant Major in the British Army, it's next to God. Everybody fears him terribly. Again, they put me a big mustache that I look older. We came to the gate 25 minutes after 12. The military police at the gate sees a sergeant major, stands attention, put his submachine gun under his arm, salutes me. I give him the movement order. And the movement order says 12 British soldiers. At the meantime, Tzvikeni Kisha jumped from the truck with his kit bag. And he steps on the step of the truck, and he looks inside. He counts 12 soldiers as written in the tent. Gets down, salutes me again, open the gate, and lets at him. We reach to the tent, to the camp, and we turn the truck facing the gate, and everybody jumped to his factions. My function in the camp is to guard the cabin of the truck. If they get over that cabin of the truck, everything is due. I get down with a submachine gun called a Stain gun. That Stain gun is terrible. He shoots when he wants, not when we want. And the war independence, we had a song. When you used to go on operation, we used to sing that song. I won't sing because when I sing, nobody stands on the way. Nobody stays, everybody runs away because I'm the most terrible singer in the world. And that song said, with the will of God, even a broom could shoot. In Hebrew it says, Berzona Elohim gamatate yore. And when we reach there, I get down. I took the grades down because Sergeant Major won't stand on guard like this. I was standing with my back holding the Stain gun like this. And the two guys were were assigned with machine guns, one opposite the living quarters, another one opposite a crossroad that we thought the reinforcements could come from there. They laid down with the machine or the brain guns. The rest of the guys got, no, first of all, the leader of the attack and another guy, they went in the tent. There were two British soldiers there. They pulled the revolvers. We were the fastest in the Middle East to pull the ball because all of our training was in hideouts, pull. We were, many times we pulled before the enemy and they saved the operation, especially in the King David Hotel, which it wasn't an hotel at the time. It was the headquarters of the British Army. And if one of our guys won't pull before Sergeant Major went down, Macintosh, if one of our guys won't pull before him, and here we are, our guys, the first shoot that they ever shot, it wasn't the fighting itself. All we were trained in hideouts. So two guys went in, there were two British soldiers there. They pulled their guns, put between their ribs, said, put up your hands, we won't harm you. The sergeant sees the captain pulling a revolver and said, stop the jokes, sir, don't accept jokes. It's not a joke, it's for real. We are the Jewish paratroopers. 145 dreamed of Jewish paratroopers. Okay, immediately they surrendered. Because there was a direct order from our leader, Menachem Begin, saying, whoever surrendered, don't harm him. And it saved lots of lives, to us and to them as well. Because they knew if they surrendered after operation, we let them go. But we didn't do anything to them. They took out from their pocket a plaster and a bandage, and a rope. They put around a bandage and plaster on the mouth, tied their hands behind the back, put them on the floor and tied their legs as well, and starting loading the ship. And they gave the order. The guys jumped from the truck, and when they saw those arms, their eyes blobbed up from seeing so much arms. Imagine those guys from 16, 17 years old, all they see a revolver, suddenly they see so many arms, what joy it is. It's very hard to explain what kind of a joy it is. And they're starting feeling precious arms on the truck. I'm standing like this with my back behind the cabin. About 10 minutes later, a British captain comes by. I stand to attention, put some machine gun on my arm. I salute him. He salutes me back anyway. Suddenly he looks at me and said, what the hell paratroopers are doing in my camp? We did notice that those troops here, they had a khaki beret with a ball in the center of it. And me, as I talked to a British officer, said, my captain, sir. What's your captain over there? He went over to, what's your captain? One of our guys pulled up over, put within his arms, his ribs, said, we are the Jewish paratroopers. Lay down on the ground, we won't harm you. Okay, he laid down the arm. They saw that the commander of this camp lifted his hands and lay down. Seconds or minutes later, a blast of heavy fire came over us. One of the machine guns saw from the dining room British troops starting running out. He fired toward them. They run back to the dining room, and they didn't dare to come out again. From the crossroad, a truck tried to get by. They fired at him. The other machine gun fired him, hit him, and he turned and closed the way. Under heavy fire, we are loading special arms in that camp. At the meantime, at the gate, Ishai, Tzvikenik, that he was there, when he heard the fighting, he went slowly near the military police, pulled his gun, put between his ribs, sit in your post, we won't harm you. He surrendered immediately. He took out plaster, band, and rope, and tied his hands behind his leg, put him in his post, tied. He took his pouches out, put them himself, took his Palestinian police, put in his, no, sorry, military police put in himself, and put him in his post and tied his legs as well, and he stood as a policeman there. While I was standing like this with my submachine gun, with my Sten gun, suddenly I see rounds coming toward me. They're shooting at me. I'm looking, where are they shooting at me from? I see over the streets 5 British soldiers crawling down and shooting at me by revolvers. I put up my submachine gun. I pull the trigger, it doesn't fire. I reloaded it again and put it again, it doesn't fire. Firing from all over. I thought if I escape, they'll finish with me, they'll get hold of the truck, and in my imagination, I could see 12 hanging ropes hanging our guys. I decided to bluff them. I stood up them with the submachine gun and started moving forward and back. They were sure I was shouting. They dig themselves down. I am shouting, Shimshon. Shimshon was the second in command of the attack. And he ran to me. He had a Tommy gun, one of the best submachine guns I ever knew in my life. I said, Shimshi, you are shooting at me from over the street and my gun is not functioning. Okay, stop between me and he finished with those 5. I'm standing here with the submachine, it doesn't work. Over the street, I see 5 revolvers. A revolver is the most sophisticated weapon in the underground. My heart doesn't permit to leave those revolvers. I asked one of the guys to stand, to guard the cabin. I'm going over the street to bring those revolvers. You're crazy, look, firing around. I said, yes, you're right, I'm crazy. I need those revolvers. I ran in zigzags. I came to those poor 5 lying down. One had his revolver in his hand. It wasn't easy to take it out from his hand. Another 4 in the ground. I took them and ran back to the cabin. One revolver I threw into the cabin, 2 in my belt, and 2 in my hands. I stood like this now to guard the cabin. A truck of 3 tons, we loaded more than 5 tons of arms and ammunition. And here there was the bugle alarm to retreat. Why a bugle alarm? Because at the beginning of our operation, the retreat was by the whistle. Every policeman had a string here with a whistle. When he saw something suspicious, I got it suspicious, and he started to whistle. Many times it ruined our operations. It has been decided with a bugle alarm, 1 in a million there will be in the same time the bugle alarm. Secondly, if the enemy hears a bugle alarm, he got excited. He thinks all the Jewish cavalry are attacking them, and it'll take a few minutes of not knowing what's happening, and we take those few minutes of time and we escape from the place. You should see what happened in Irgun then. Everybody's starting to learn to blow a bugler. What happened again? Starting to blow a bugler. Why? Who knew to blow the bugler? He had more chances to go on operation. Everybody wanted to go on the operations. And one of my guys, I don't take him to operation for many times. I said, look, if I won't go next month to an operation, I'll leave the Irgun, I'll go to staying group. And I took him to operation. I didn't want him to leave. Not every operation we could take all of them. And the guys ran to the truck. We counted. Everybody was there, and we started rolling towards the gate. At the gate, we stood a fraction of a second. Tzvi Koenig jumped the truck, and we started rolling towards a high place in northwest of Rishon. While we were driving towards Rishon, the town, a blast of heavy fire went on us. An armored car was chasing us and firing at us with a machine gun. We had strict orders for our leader, Menachem Begin, not to fire back in town, not to hurt the citizens. We made all kind of maneuvers at the time. We said we made Chicago in the streets of Rishon. We managed to escape them. We reached to a place where we wanted to, the hide place. There it finishes the road, and then there is dunes of sand to two other cities, Holon and Rishon LeZion. Not Rishon, Holon and Bat Yam. We reached there. Only God knows how this heavy loaded truck pierced from rounds, and he flew at the end of the street of the road and flew about 5-6 meters inside the. We cleaned the trucks, and we digged ourselves there. The armored car will come. Minutes by, we see the armored coming. He stopped about 40 meters from us, and we hardly breathed. They stood there for 40 minutes, sorry, for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, it was eternal for us. When they saw there's something suspicious, they turned and they left, and we breathed freely. And we took all the arms in dig out that we prepared from before. 2 guys were hardly wounded in the back. Michael Ashbel and Yosef Simchon. The nurse that was there decided, and another guy, a big boy, he was 17 years old, he got a scratch in his head. The nurse that was there said, Arben Shimon, the orders were that we take our uniforms down and we put civils on, and we go on foot without arms and all to the other town of Holon, and there we split ourselves in baskets. Me and Tzvi Koenig, that was at the gate, we don't take we only change our berets, and now that guy, that big guy that is scratched, the nurse said, Ashbel Simchon, hardly wounded in the back, they can't go with you, but Peretz Ben Shem could go with you. He was 17 years old, started to cry. He said, what are you doing to me? I'm injured in my head. I'll die walking in those sands. He said, it's nothing, it's only a scratch. Nothing will happen to you. You're danger that you stay here. Me, I was built very good at the time, said, come on, I'll carry you. I don't exaggerate. He put his hand on my shoulders to kneel on me, and nearly put me as a pick inside the sand there. So big it was. And I'm carrying that Goliath over to Holon. On the way, I'm sweating. I put my hand in my pocket to take my handkerchief to clean the sweat. What do I find in my pocket? A bullet went through the truck and sat in my pocket. That bullet, later on, I made a hole with a chain in all the operations where this was my defense. We reached Holon. He was the healthiest of all. He was the first to run a bus and go away. At least I had to carry him all the way from Rishon to Holon. We split ourselves to few buses. Why? If there will be a roadblock that don't see many youngsters in one truck, it was suspicious. In that time, there was curfew to Jews couldn't travel in highways from 6 in the evening to 6 in the morning. At 10 o'clock, at 4 o'clock, came two young girls who were also Irgun members with a taxi to take Ashbel and Simchon to a secret hospital in Tel Aviv. Why a secret hospital? Because after such operation, the British used to raid hospitals and locate wounded from bullets. One category of hospital they never came to visit. What kind of hospital was that? You can imagine? Maternity hospital. Maternity hospital they never came to visit. There were a few maternity hospitals in Tel Aviv that fancied us. They were private. And Professor Marcos was attending them. They used to enlist at coming to give birth. What they gave birth? Bullets. Shula and Tzipi, Ashbel and Simchon wounded in the back. They sat in a taxi. On the way, there was a roadblock. The British didn't like those two young couples sitting there. They jailed them. Shula and Tzipi were taken to the prison, to the women's prison, was in Bethlehem, and those two girls were there in detention for 3 years without a trial until the state of Israel was declared. The High Commissioner, every 3 months, prolonged their detention. Ashbel and Simchon, the British found out that they were wounded in the back. They decided they were in the attack. They sentenced them to death by hanging. At 10 o'clock, sentence was passed. 12:30, we were already at the Officers Club in Tel Aviv, in Ayalkon Street, not far from here. 7 guys disguised as British Army. I was disguised as captain. Again, they put me big monsters to look to order. We went in freely, and we took hold of the Officers Club. Took five British officers, a colonel, 2 captains, 2 lieutenants. And we brought them to a hideout, and we told the British they'll hang Ashbel and Simchon, we'll hang those British officers. The place was where we hid them, in near the new bus station in the south of Tel Aviv. On the back of it, behind the street, in a place there, it's written on the wall saying, here have been detained British soldiers, British officers as hostages to save their lives of Ashbel and Simchon. 10 days later, on the night of blowing up the bridges of the railways, I was a commander of a group. We blew up a bridge near Ashdod in the south of Tel Aviv. On the retreat, we were caught. The British found out that Yerachmiah Rom, one of the guys, and me were serving in the British Army at the same time as we are in the underground. We had a field court-martial as traitors and 5th column. One penalty to 5th column, death by firing squad. The British used to hang our guys. Yerach and me were sentenced to be shot by firing squad. First of all, Almighty God, they didn't dare to execute us. What saved us? The 5 British officers we had in our hands. When I took part in kidnapping those 5 British officers to save the lives of Ashbel and Simchon, I never dreamed that 4 weeks later it saved my life as well. Ashbel and Simchon were pardoned from life to life imprisonment. Me and Yerachmiah Rom were pardoned to 15 years in prison, and we let the officers go. I was in jail for 13 months. After 13 months, my friends came disguised as British Army, Royal Signal Corps. They attacked the Aker jail. They commanded Shimshon Dovkohen that he covered me in Srefim. You remember that they called him and he killed those 5 that were shooting at me? He was the commander of this attack. They attacked the Aker jail, and from there we escaped back to the front, 41 guys. Until outside of the old city of Aker, everything went smooth. We didn't have any casualties. We made that operation on a Sunday recreation day for the British troops. They didn't care to come here in Tel Aviv in the beach. They were at the beach of Acre city. Acre city was an Arab city. When they heard the explosive and the firing, they made a roadblock that we didn't take into consideration. We were 3 trucks and a jeep. After the old city, we had to turn left. 2 trucks turned left. Lucky me, I was in one of them. One truck made mistake, turned to the right to where the British troops from the beach made the roadblock. They fired him, they hit the driver in the head, and they massacred those sitting there. 9 were killed. Between them was Ashbel, that we saved them from the gallows by kidnapping the 5 British officers, was killed in that truck. Shimshon, that was in the jeep, when he saw what's going on there, he jumped from the jeep with a machine gun in his hip and shouted in English to the British troops, "Cease fire, cease fire." The British troops saw British officers shouting, "Cease fire," they stopped firing. The moment they stopped firing, he shouted in Hebrew to the truck. He said, "Who could escape, escape immediately." When the British heard that he's shouting also in Hebrew, they opened fire with all guns. He was killed instantly. 3 guys managed to escape from police truck, and he paid it with his life to save them. We reached back to the front only for 27 instead of 41. Some were killed, 5 were injured, and returned to prison. 5 guys that were in strongholds. They didn't hear the bugle alarm to retreat. They fought until the last round of ammunition. They were caught. 2 of them, they were underage. They were sentenced to life imprisonment. 3, Abshalom Habib, Meir Nakar, and Yaakov Weiss, they were sentenced to be hanged. We looked for British officers to kidnap it. They hide themselves in camps. They went out only in big convoys, so we couldn't find any British officers. Our intelligence found out that in the town of Netanya, 2 British civilians are going from one coffee shop to another shop. We looked for them, we located them. It turned out to be there were 2 British sergeants and British intelligence. We tried them, and we sentenced them to death, and we told the British they'll hang our 3 guys, will hang those 2 brothers. For them, 2 sergeants wasn't a big deal like the officers. They hanged Avshalom Habib, Meir Nakar, and Yaakov Weiss in the same fortress that they attacked to save us. And we, with big sorrow, believe me, with big sorrow, we hanged those 2 British sergeants in one of the forests in Netanya. Like this, we broke the gallows. Until then, they hanged 8 Irgun members in Acre, 2 staying group members in Cairo, another 2 Meir Feinstein from the Irgun and Moshe Barazani from the staying room. They blew themselves up before they were hanged. It was their plan. They asked us to smuggle them hand grenades. We brought them a basket with oranges, and 2 oranges were 2 hand grenades heaten. But the rabbi told them, it'll be in the last passage from the death row till the hanging, till the gallows. They begged him not to come. He said, "No, I'll come with you." They couldn't tell him the truth because of the Jewish tradition, it's not allowed it to be, it's not permitted to be suicide, and they were afraid that he'll convince them not to do that. So they blew themselves up before the rabbi and the executors came. There were no more hangings in the right of Israel. From now on, and we beat the British officers. From now on, the judge, if a guy fell in their hand, the judge would tell him, "You're too young to be hanged and too old to be flogged." and send him to life imprisonment. If we didn't take that measure of hanging those poor sergeants that we didn't want it to, but we had no choice, who knows how many youngsters would have been hanged until the British left this country. Begin told them all, hanging will go by hanging, stop that hangings. They didn't listen. After we hanged those two poor British sergeants, they stopped hanging. The policy of the Irgun, all the time since it started, until we dissolved, our lectures were always that when the state of an Hebrew state or Israel state will raise, everybody will go to his way. And then there will be elections, and then we'll see what happens. And now when the United Nations decided to divide this country into two states, Arab state and Jewish state, we accept it. Though that the Jewish state was supposed to be in three parts. Part of the Negev, a very narrow street by the beach, very straight by the beach, and the Upper Galilee. Western Galilee, Judea and Samaria, Jaffa were sitting now in the heart of the Jewish state, Arab state, and part of the Negev. The Arabs said, no, we're going to fight and throw the Jews to the sea. We didn't like that they chose to the sea by force. We decided to fight. The British that ruled here on the 15th of May, 48, they said that they'll be neutral. Unfortunately, they were one-sided neutral. They held the Arabs in arms and ammunition. They handed them strategic points. And many places they fought with the Arabs against us, especially in the liberation of Jaffa, that the Irgun fought to liberate Jaffa. 80% of our casualties, it was from the British and not from the Arabs. The British were leaving the country at that time. They didn't have enough forces. They brought back forces from Malta and Cyprus. They were still ruling in the islands of Malta and Cyprus. And they landed in Jaffa, and they counterattacked us. We fought, the Irgun fought to liberate Jaffa. In the first 2 days, it was a chaos. We didn't succeed because opposite us they stood. They were Germans, Poles, Yugoslavs, Iraqians, Syrians. From all over they came to kill Jews here because the British left the borders between the Arab countries. And they concentrated them in the Mediterranean. They blockaded us. We couldn't get any help from abroad. The only way we could get help, it was for us that we had to raid British camps and take our arms. And the British counterattacked us. No, sorry, first of all, we attacked against the Arabs. The first 2 days, it was a chaos. In the morning, we attacked. In the afternoon, we withdrew. We buried our dead and leaked our wounds. Because the Arabs in Jaffa, in every tall building, they put snipers. Even in their mosques, they put snipers and they fired into Tel Aviv. In 5 months, we had in Tel Aviv 1,300 casualties between dead and wounded, women, children, and all. They are going to decide to go and liberate Jaffa, to cut down farming in Tel Aviv. The Haganah opposed us, said, you cannot go and fight Jaffa now. Jaffa belongs to the Arab state. And the British are there. We cannot fight against the British as well as the Arabs. And first of all, we have got to conquer the villages around Jaffa. Then Jaffa will be blockaded, and they'll stop fighting. The Irgun said, how could you? For instance, we could attack and liberate those and blockade it from this side. What about the sea? From the sea, We haven't got any, we've got only raft boats, I don't know what to call it, life-saving raft boats. They are flat, you know. And if you wait until the British leave Jaffa, the Egyptians, all the Arab countries said when the British will leave, they'll invade to destroy this land, to destroy this state. And there's fear that the Egyptians will land in Jaffa with artillery, with tanks, and with infantry. We don't have an air force. We didn't have air force. We didn't have tanks. We didn't have artillery. Lots of discussions. And on the on the 25th of April 1948, it was the first day of Passover. We attacked Jaffa. I was a company commander on the attack of Jaffa. When I went out with my 600 warriors, we were in all. When I went with my company to my duty was to hold the mosque, which is not far from here. Have you seen the mosque there? From the top of the mosque, they were shooting snipers into Tel Aviv. I had my duty, my company was to hold them. We went and attacked on the 25th and 26th. We couldn't imagine getting a piece of ground even. On the 26th in the evening, our leader, Menachem Begin, called all the commanders in the field. We sat down on the ground and said, "My dear brothers," like this he used to talk to us, "Achai Yekarim. It's not a shame. Opposite that mighty force, we'll wait for another occasion." All of us jumped immediately, said, "No, our commander, we're not leaving them. We know that we could overcome them." He wrote in the book Revolt that we revolted against him. Nobody wanted to revolt against him. Then Amichai Paglin, Gidi, this museum dedicated on his name, he was the commander of the attack on Jaffa. He came to him and said, "My commander, give me 24 hours more. In those 2 days, I learned the front, and I've got a method how to crush those positions of the Arabs." The houses from Tel Aviv to Jaffa, they were linked one to another like a wagon in a train. To come from the head of the houses with chisels and hammers, make holes in the wall, and go from one room to another like a hidden tunnel. He gave us 24 hours more. First of all, Gidi he said, "We'll cut the force by 2/3. Only 1/3 is enough." Why? We were too many people. I guess 1/3 to 200 people is enough, and that will be in reserve. Our Gideon from the Bible acclimated his fighters. Do you remember the Bible? The Old Testament, not the New Testament, the Old Testament. And it says, Gideon, from the Bible, he was with his warriors in fighting the Philistines. And there were the armistice. Now, he has got to counterattack again. They were near a river. Those who put their arms aside and they took the water like this to drink water, the Tzachors don't need that, they leave their arms aside. Go home. Go back to your wives. Those that left their arms in their hand and leaned and leaked the water, he took them to battle. They called them the 300 leakers, Shlosh Motam Lakikim in Hebrew. We had no river to give the guys here to drink. We had only the sea who is going to give them the sea. From each command of the field, he asked the most courageous ones to give him. All were courageous, believe me, everybody was courageous. For me, he demanded 27 guys. When I said you and you, 27 guys are going now to the fighting and the rest on reserve, you should see those on reserve what they did. My name was Mikhail in the underground. They never called them the real names. He said, we won't call you Mikhail again. We'll call you traitor. We are betraying us. So that, my friends, it's not the first, but it's not the last battle. There'll be more battles. Sit and rest, and I wasn't mistaken. Some of them fell in the fighting in Jaffa later on, and in other comebacks. The other plan of Gidi was the houses from Tel Aviv to Jaffa were linked one to another like wagons in a train. To come from the end of the houses with scissors and hammers, make holes in the walls, go from one room to another, like a hidden tunnel. What we didn't succeed in 2 days, in that method, in less than 2 hours, we were under the Arab position. We put the explosive, and there was a big explosion. With a cover of dust and smoke that came, the guys stormed the place and conquered it. There's place after place, a place after place. We came to a T road. You can't go straight. The house is finished here. There's a road here. We have got to go by because here there's a very strong hold of the Arabs. They're falling like hell to us. You've got to cross the street. How we cross the street? Amichai came with an idea. One of our guys lay on the road. The other one threw him sandbags. He built a cover of a wall, a small wall, a wall of 50, 60 centimeters high from sandbags. He got hit, another one got inside. There were places that 6 guys got hit to build those guys. Then they pioneer, the one with the explosive, moved to the other side, put the explosives. And like this, in 18 hours, the Arabs collapsed. In 18 hours, here in this place, there was a stronghold of the Arabs. But 30 guys reached about 40 meters from here. When they saw the sea, without firing a shot, without the program, nothing, they run and shouting in Hebrew, ayam, the sea, ayam, running to that. The Arabs went here, when saw those running without shot and all, and with a funny word in their mouth, they left and they ran away. We got few of them and said, why did you run away? You've got so much ammunition here and guns. How come you didn't fire back? So we saw 700, 800 Jews running with a funny word in their mouth, ayam. We were scared. Unfortunately, they didn't remain like this till today. Today, they are more sophisticated than before. Now, the British that were in Jaffa, they said, what? The Irgun, number one enemy of the Irgun, number one enemy of the British is conquering Jaffa under our nose, we won't leave them. They issued us an ultimatum, saying return back to the line where you started. Otherwise, we're going to bomb Tel Aviv by air, sea, and land. And they brought, as I mentioned before, they brought reinforcements from Malta and Cyprus, and they stood opposite us. They sent Spitfires. Spitfire, the first row of combat plane. They flew over Tel Aviv, very low flying to scare the people. Over our station post, they dive and fire the machine guns. Begin issued an ultimatum. Said, beware. One British shell will fall in Tel Aviv. We're going to bomb your centers, your concentrations. There were 5,000 soldiers there. And when we blew the houses on the streets. We digged ourselves in the ruins, and we said they won't pass by. And the British believed if the Irgun said that we're going to bomb them because we confiscated from them 20,000 rounds of ammunition of 6-inch mortar, and they knew that we'll do it. They decided to counterattack us. They gave us hell. They shell us with artillery. It was terrible. We never experienced such shelling. After they shelled us a lot, they thought that we were exhausted. They started to advance. We had two anti-tank projectors, which means 2 anti-tank rifles. With 2 anti-tank rifles, how many rounds of ammunition we had against the British Empire, you think? 4. When the first tank was in sight, we fired 2 shells. One missed, the other one hit. They left the tank in the area, and they withdrew back. The big miracle was that they didn't know that we have only 2 shells left. And it became a steady war. They fired, they didn't dare to advance. We fire, we don't have the force to advance against 5,000 British soldiers, and it was a steady war. And me, as my English was not like today, it was a very British accent, I used to talk to them in loudspeakers. Why should you die? This is not your war. You're going back to Old Blighty in 2 weeks. Old Blighty is a sacred name for England, for the British soldiers. We'd like to see you walking into the ships and not in coffins. Don't fire, we won't fire at you. But they didn't listen to us, but they fired from far. They did that advance. Until the 30th of April. We started 25th of April. On the 30th of April, they reached the municipality of Tel Aviv, Israel Rokach. The mayor was Israel Rokach. They said, we are willing to stop the fighting if the Irgun will give their positions to the Haganah. The Irgun didn't accept it at the beginning. There was a lot of pressure from the headquarters of the Haganah and from the municipality of Tel Aviv. We accepted to give them our positions, not before. They promised us that they won't withdraw by demand of the British. They'll fight for every inch we liberated until now. Then we gave them our positions and we withdrew back. And then it was quite all over. Before we couldn't dream, sleep if there wasn't firing. We had to go to sleep. Now we can't sleep because it's very quiet all over. And the British stayed in Jaffa until the 13th of May, 13th of May, because on 15th of May they're leaving the country. They left to Jaffa and to Port Said, to Haifa and Port Said in Egypt. And then we went inside with the victory parade. Sorry, on the 13th of May, when they left, few Arab leaders that left, they remain in Jaffa. They came to sign surrender document. And on the 14th of May, we entered Jaffa, a victory parade, groups of the Irgun and the Haganah. And on the 14th of May, also the State of Israel was declared. It was on a Friday. So we gave to Israel, to our government, a silver platter with blood on it, that we liberated the city of Jaffa. At that time, Jaffa was connected to Tel Aviv and called Tel Aviv Jaffa. And since it's called till now Tel Aviv Jaffa, and became the largest city in the land, because it was Jaffa was the largest Arab city in this land. Now, thank God, Jerusalem is much more larger than here. And this is how we liberate that area, and the Egyptians didn't get here. I told you that I talk Arabic fluently. Before an attack to another village, we used to come with loudspeakers telling them, you belong to this land. We want to live in peace with you. We are coming to fight the strangers. The strangers were all those that came, Germans, Poles, and all over. In Jaffa, we caught prisoners, Poles, Iraqis, Syrians, Yugoslavs, and all. We want to live in peace with you. But the strangers won't let them leave. And not only vocally, we told them, also with pamphlets we used to distribute in their villages in Arabic, saying to our Arab neighbors, إِلَى الْجِيرَانِ الْعَرَبِ. And it says there, you stand aside, we won't harm you. Now, Dir Yassin that you mentioned. Dir Yassin was a village, Arab village, that they attacked. They sniped 3 neighborhoods in Jerusalem, and the road from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, they used to snipe on the buses going to Jerusalem or from Jerusalem. They're going to decide to go and liberate that place and cut out that sending death into Jewish population. The steering group said they want also to go with us. They gave them a part only. Their gun went in three positions or 3 arrows, and the steering group went in 1 arrow. We came. I wasn't there, but they started telling them in loudspeakers. You citizens of this land, leave the area. We lost the opportunity of surprise. Leave the area. We're going to attack the strangers here. In Iraq, in Dir Yassin, there were Iraqis. They came in civil. They were army. They came in civilians as they attacked. They didn't permit the citizens to leave the area. They let them in the houses, and they barricaded themselves in the windows and the doors of the houses. And on an attack, like on an attack, when you storm an attack, you throw hand grenades. And those hand grenades fell in the houses without knowing that there's women and children there. And we managed to overcome them and to liberate the place. There were in all 110 killed. The fantastic Arab imagination, they said there have been 300, they put them in the wall, they pardoned them in the wall. All is bluff, they never fired. We've got 3 orders. I'll let you see our commander, what gave us an order out the way in battle. And there were 31 women and children killed that we didn't want to honor because they were barricaded inside the houses that the Iraqis were barricaded in the windows and the doors. And the rest were the warriors killed. We had about 15 dead there. And then they started accusing us that we massacred those people there. We never massacred. We had strict orders. Whoever lifts his hand is your prisoner, don't harm him. To the British and to the Arabs. The British knew that when they surrendered, we saved a lot of lives to them and to us. The British knew if they surrender after the operation, we let them go. The Arabs, until the Arab countries didn't invade this land, the Arabs in this land never take Jewish prisoners. Every Jew who fell in their hands, babies, children, women, old age and all, slaughter the Jew, slaughter the Jew. They said, dear Muhammad bin Saif, Muhammad says only by the sword. And only after the Arab countries invaded this land, they started taking Jewish prisoners. Until then, no Jew fell in their hands and stayed alive. Now, when we went to attack Jaffa, our leader, Menachem Begin, stood in front of us. It's the first time ever that we saw him. We heard about him, but we never saw him. Many people fainted when they saw him. They're so excited they were. He said, we're going to conquer Jaffa, one of the most to liberation of Israel, of our land. Remember who you left behind. In front of you, there's a worldless enemy that wants to wipe us out. Behind you, your parents, your children, your daughters, your wives, and your compassion, women and children. That's when they don't compassion our children and women. Aim well, save ammunition. Because there was a blockade here, we couldn't get anything from abroad. Whoever lifts his hand is a prisoner of you, don't harm him. To the attack will lead you Gideon, experienced in fighting, one way forward, one way, remember the Irgun standards, and one way forward. And this is the measure he gave us, and this is how we behaved all over, since all the immunity we had against the British and against the Arabs as well. Whoever surrendered, we didn't harm him. And when we got the place, we never tell them to leave the place. Look at Jaffa. When we came in here, we counted the people. They left only 3,000 from 85,000 that were left there. That they were there. And if I can plug in Gidi, prepare buses, I will send them away. Begin heard about it, let them be. If they rest, they want to live in peace with us. Now there are nearly 30,000, and they give us hell to the Jews living there. And most of the underworld comes from there. That mosque that is standing till today there, that mosque, the Arabs didn't go to worship there. They said it's not kosher. Why? Because the one that built it, it was Hassan Bek. He drank. The Arabs not allowed you to drink any alcohol. He drank alcohol. He went with women and all. He was. So nobody went there. Only after the first intifada that they revolted against us, they started coming from all over to worship in that place. Before that, it wasn't a worship place. From the tower, they shot into Tel Aviv. It was the last place that we overcome them. The ammunition and arms, we find them. We wish we had so much ammunition that we find in this holy place. Gidi put already explosives around to blow it up. Again, our leader Menachem Begin heard about it, said, this is a sacred place, don't touch it. And we didn't touch it. They blew up 4 our old synagogues on the border of Tel Aviv and Jaffa. And we were not allowed to blow that synagogue, that sent so much death into Tel Aviv. And like this, we maintain only the order of our leader. And like this, there you're seeing the big lies. And our leftists, unfortunately, they also took it under their wings, and they said they are going to massacre there. That there was an Arab commander there that he said all that were killed in battle. Nobody was massacred there. He wrote a book about it, and the Arabs killed him because of that. And like this, I want to tell you a little story. They called me from England. They wanted to talk to me. I said, yes. He said, we have been at your museum. We heard you. We are from Sinbad Film Corporation. We want to film you, an Arab warrior, and second in command of the British troops in Jaffa. We'll come to the museum and we'll interview you three together. I said, look, you must ask from the Defense Department authorization to film in the museum. If it's out of the museum, if it's out of the museum, I don't care. I could film. But in the museum, I gave them the telephone. They called and they gave them permission. They came, it was in August, so warm here today. They came in August, and the British officer, the second command, with a big mustache like this, is walking like he's still the owner of Palestine. So he said, pleased to meet you, sir. Pleased to meet you, too. I said, where is the Arab warrior? He got chicken. He said, if you'll say what happened in the liberation of Jaffa by the Jews, the Arabs will kill him. He doesn't want to talk about it. Okay. We came in, I started to talk to him. That officer told me, you had no business to go into Jaffa. I said, why I had no business to go in Jaffa? Because Jaffa was supposed to be in the Arab state. I said, what business you had to be in Jaffa that you killed so many of my friends? He said, I was the authority had to defend them from you. I said, where were you when they massacred our people in Hebron in 1929? Why didn't you go and help them there? Why didn't you go and help them in the War of Independence when they massacred and got hold of prisoner Hebron? No? He said, I can't talk to this man. I said, okay, don't talk to me. He said, you in Lebanon and Beirut, you killed 22,000 boys and women and girls, women and boys, sorry. What? We killed them, they killed themselves, one between them, the Christian and the Muslim, they fought between them. How could you say we're talking about Jaffa? Why are you talking about Beirut? I don't know where you come from. If they are shelling you for 20 years, and our children grow up in shelters, that's why we went into Lebanon, to stop the shelling into Israel. So you Jews in England took hold of all the banks in England. I said, what? Out. Out of here. Anti-Semites don't stand here. This is a holy place. Out. The director, I would say, the one that arranges the filming, no? The producer says, Mr. Nahmias, you can't do that. What? Here I can do whatever I want. Anti-Semites don't stand here. Out. If you want, you could go with them as well. And they told him to go out. He said out, it was so warm. And I said to the girls that if he'll come, he wants water, tell him, Mr. Nahmias said there's plenty of water in the sea, don't give them water. We're talking about, he says the Jews got hold of the banks and all of that. And they made a film about the Nakba. The Nakba is the Holocaust of the Arabs here. And then I saw the film in TV. They heard me here, but they didn't show that I threw him out and all. They didn't show that. I wanted that they'll hear him say that all the Jews got hold of that. Nothing was done in Deir Yassin, first of all. There was a comeback there. People were killed because they didn't leave. Secondly, we called them not to leave, to stay. And they heard the Mufti, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the great Mufti of Jerusalem. He made one hand with the Germans. He had headquarters in Berlin. He recruited Muslims all over the world. Before the war of independence, I had many Arab friends in Jerusalem. I used to live in Jerusalem. My father was a builder. And hundreds of Arabs worked for him. And I was going through them, and I loved the Arab language. You see, but I haven't got whom to talk to, because the Arabs here in Eretz Israel, in the land of Israel, when I talk to them in Arabic, they answer me in Hebrew. They don't talk Arabic. There's a restaurant here in Jaffa that I go and eat there. I talk to them Arabic, he talks to me Hebrew. One day I told him, I'll never come again here. Why? The food isn't good? Wonderful good. But you are not good. What do you mean I'm not good? That I talk to you in Arabic. Why you answer me in Hebrew? I want to talk Arabic. He said, Wallah, Yosef, he says, when I go home with my wife, I talk Arabic with Hebrew together, like a salad. They heard the Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini. He told them, leave. It will be easier for the Arab countries when they attack to throw the Jews to the sea. It will be easy. You won't be in the way. And that's why they left. Not because we told them to leave. Nobody mentioned Deir Yassin. Nobody. And Deir Yassin, it was such an exaggeration of about the killed. They were killed in battle and not a massacre. And unfortunately, maybe you could film the order our leader gave us not to harm anybody. Everybody who lifts his hand is a prisoner of war, don't harm them. In Haifa, the commander of Jaffa, the general that liberated Haifa, he stood on the way and he said, don't leave, stay here. We want you here. You belong here. Don't leave. And many left and many remain in Jaffa. In Haifa, there's lots of Arabs there. And they're living together with the Jews, and they're happy. They never had it so good as now. And so that we never wanted them to leave. Nobody told them that leave the area or otherwise. What could I tell you about it? Me in action. Now they are more clever than before. When I fought Arabs, I was looking for the commander. The minute I hit his commander, everybody ran away, and some ran and held me by the belt, said, I'm under your belt. In Arabic it says, Ana tahajjun narak. I'm under your belt. Means that you are very small now, don't harm us. And we never harmed them. We took them prisoners, we had never harmed them. If somebody, by mistake, fired at one who surrendered, he went to trial, he went to jail for that. There isn't an army that during a fighting that somebody surrendered and he hit him, he went to jail for that. Here, people, they say we have got to get our lawyer behind us when we go on the combat, because we have to be very, very careful who lifts his hand or who didn't lift his hand. We never harm women and children on purpose. They may be hit because they hide them. They used to take women and children, put them in front of them, the warriors, that they'll say that we hit and he killed women and children. And in Emek, in the valley of Jordan, there was a cave there. There were hidden there warriors, Arab warriors, and they put a woman at the entrance with a baby, and the troops ran looking for them. They were inside, and there was that woman sitting there. They didn't harm her. They went forward. When they went back, those inside went out and fired them in the back and killed those soldiers. Between them, there was a general and that he was killed. They always take one child, put them in front of them. They do that in Syria as well. Those that are involved in Syria, they say the government is taking women, children, put them in places that they weren't. This is their customers. Look, as I said, since a kid, I fought for the independence of my country. And I told you about the Australians that they wanted to take me with them. Did I tell you that? I was fighting for my country. I joined the British Army while I was a very young guy, 14 and a half years old. I fought against the Germans. I didn't tell you all what I made in the British country. In the British Army, the officer came, I need a volunteer. The British never volunteer. Until the officer said, you volunteer, you volunteer. I always jump in front. The British soldier is crazy, that guy. They didn't know why. I wanted to learn, I wanted to see. He took me to, my unit was number 1 CRE aerodromes. We were the first to go in and look for booby traps, if they put booby traps. And when we withdrew, we were the last to leave. We put booby traps for the Germans. Now, when we are leaving, we had to leave Tobruk, the airport of Tobruk. The officer came, he needed a volunteer. I jumped in front, said, come. He took me to a building 3 stories high. He said, look, when we come back, I want to see that building flat down. Go to work. I went to the cellar, I looked, I saw a little head like this side, and there's 2 pillars. I said, that thing will do. And I came to him and said, okay, I've got a place how to do it and where. How much explosive you need? I said, 300 kilos. He said, you crazy? I don't want to blow all the airport. I said, that's what needed. He said, okay, I'll give you 200. Okay, gave me 200. I put in there. I camouflage it very nicely. Where I put the trigger where to explode it? In the WC, in the Niagara. When they pulled the Niagara, I put the wire until the WC. I camouflaged it wonderfully. And we left, and we saw the Germans coming in. And we left. When we conquered it, come with me, I want to see what you've done. We went there, the building was flat down. How many were killed there and all. They didn't know what they were preparing me for. I wanted to do all those things. I wanted to be ready. When I come back, I was also in the Irgun at the time, see? We used to smuggle Jews from North Africa. How we used to do that? We used to give them our uniforms. I used to drive them to Cairo. There, I'll take the uniforms and the soldier's book, come back and give to the other soldiers the uniforms and that. Like this, we took Jews from Tripoli, from Tunisia, and from Benghazi, from Tobruk and all. And that's what we made at the end of the war. The end of the war, it was something out of this world. Very, very hard to explain it. I said, now I could rest in peace. I've got my country, but I've got to fight again for my country against the British. Because the British won't let anybody to come in. They issued the white paper in 1931. The white paper said, Jews are allowed to come to this country only 1,500 in a year. In 5 years' time, will be here a Palestine nation with Arab majority. Arab minority. We are the minority. And Jews are not allowed to come here. So we started to fight against them. Jews are not allowed to build any in the places. What they have got till now, they are gonna take advantage of it, and they created the fence and the tower. In Hebrew, it's called Choma v'Magdal, Mugdal v'Choma, or Choma or Mugdal, the fence and the tower. They took advantage that there was a law here that the British didn't change it, a Turkish law, saying whoever builds a building without a building and he succeeds to put a roof on it, they don't demolish it. So they started building pieces of houses. They took advantage of the law, and they built modular houses, only in Farid. In a dark night, they went in with lots of volunteers on a place where they wanted to be a village. All night through, they built. In the morning, the British will wake up, will see a village, they come, and all the houses, there's roofs. They can't demolish it by law. Like this, most of all our villages were built like this. See? And we were fighting the British by force because of that. And this is after the war that some Jews were left from the Holocaust. They won't let them in. They took them again to camps, first to the island of Mauritius, which is in the Indian Ocean, and later on in Cyprus here. And people, after they came out of the camps, they were here in camps for years. The British put them on. So how we could sit and not fight against them? And people went to the gallows for it. And that. After the war, 48, there was a big, it didn't happen, it war till today, what I'm talking about. There was armistice. There was armistice, and we started building the place. Then Jews came. We had no houses for them. They were in tents. They're also refugees. They call themselves refugees. The sons and the granddaughters and all, they are refugees till today, and the United Nations hold them as refugees. Their parents were refugees, but not them. In any Arab country, they don't let them go to work, they don't let them there. They say, you're refugees, stay in the camps, because they want to hit us. We received more than 2 million refugees from Arab countries. They left all their belongings there and all, and they're here, and we helped them to start again their lives. We built houses, I was living in tents. They were in tents, they call it ma'bara. Ma'bara, it means passing by, you see? And tens of thousands are living in tents for 2, 3, 4 years until houses were built for them. And when I was in the IDF, in the reserves, I used to go every year for 28 days. And we used to go to the tents and they used to sit down and play cards in the tent. It was raining like hell. We were attending their tents and digging behind them that the water won't go in. And they were sitting all with the IDF volunteers, not volunteers, we had orders to do that. And it took years that they left those tents and went into houses. And then their volunteers, they don't help them at all. You know. And it was a feeling of creation. See, we started to create something. We created long before that here in Palestine, Israel, in the land of Israel. But now it was real creation. You haven't been a month or two in a place, suddenly you come there, you see buildings there, you see. And it was something that, I won't say pioneers, but we had lots of doing. I used to work in a construction building, and when we took to build houses for the immigrants that they came, there wasn't any rule like this. The contract was, in such date, it must be finished. And sometimes we work at night there to reach the date. You see. We had no choice. We had to work and receive our brothers here. And that's what we've been patriotic all the time. A very small, I used to disguise as an Arab. One day in '46, in the underground, I received an order to come to Haifa. I know nobody in Haifa. How could I make the contact? Take the newspaper. This time I'll take the Jerusalem Post, I say. Take out the P of the Post and stand in a corner of the street with a Jerusalem, not Post, Ost, V out. There's a window. This one that wants to meet me, he looks that it's missing the P, he says he's got to meet me. He comes and gives me the password. And like this, we get together. I come there, I stand, they give me the password, and he took me to a building, to an apartment. I don't know yet why I came there. You don't ask questions. And I see there a woman, a makeup woman. And I told the man there, tell me why I came here for. You'll know later on. Sit there. I didn't have a mustache at the time. They put me a big mustache like this. It's only Arabs that got such mustaches. And they brought a suit. I measured the suit. First time in my life I wear a suit. With a tie and a tarbouche. Tarbouche is the Arab the red with a tail on it. Until now, I know nothing yet. And they bring me a newspaper, Al-Ahlam. Al-Ahlam is an Arabic newspaper that in all the Middle East. And they cut the ha out of it. And now I know it's an Arab phrase. Yeah, they brought me a passport, a false passport, that you have got to go to Beirut. And in Beirut, you stand in a street near the American University. They told me exactly where to stand. And the password, they told me the password. You'll go there and wait there, and somebody will come to you. What I'm going there for? Don't ask questions. I come to the buses. The buses get full. They start only when it's full. Another bus from there says, Yalla, Beirut, 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 Beirut. I went in at the center, at the first row. I sat there with the open newspaper. I read also Arabic. And I'm looking all the time at the newspaper. And I'm playing like the Arabs do all the time. They play with their mustache. Then I remember the joke that one is playing with his mustache. An Arab, when he talks his mustache, and somebody makes behind him, it's the worst thing in the world. They could kill each other for that. I'm sitting there playing with my mustache. I remember that story that one is playing with one said, this came out, who is it? I'm going to kill him. Nobody came up. He's playing again. Twice he made that. He comes up, who is it? I'm going to kill him. A big guy came up, Anna, I made it. He got scared. You made it seriously or by a joke? He said, of course I did it seriously. He said, you're lucky because I don't like jokes. He was afraid. He sat down. Now I'm sitting there with my mustache playing. I'm afraid somebody will make fit what I do, but nobody did that. I came down, I went to that place. I am standing there with my newspaper. Suddenly a guy comes here, die. He puts his stuff very slowly. He tells me in Arabic, the weather in Spain is colder than here. التاتش في إسبانيا أبرد من هنا. لا يا أخي, no my friend, no my brother. Here it's colder than in Spain. Then he makes a step forward in Hebrew. He said, Bo Akharai, come after me. We're not looking one on the face of the other. If somebody is caught, that he couldn't. We came to a alley. He said, wait here. He went inside the building. He came out with a suitcase, put it behind it. Good luck, and he left. This, I've got to take it to Tel Aviv. And I don't know what there is in there. I come to the bus station. I had orders to come to that via Rosh Hanikra, I don't know how it's called in English, the border in the west of Israel, by the sea, there's an entrance. And when I leave, to come back via the Tiberias and that in the eastern part. Don't come in the same way back. I came to the bus. I said, I want to go to Tiberias. I said, oh, Tiberias, when it will be full, take hours. Hey, to Haifa. I said, my family is in Tiberias. Why should I go to Haifa? I went to the bus of Tiberias. I put the suitcases in the buses. There was head racks. I put the suitcase at the end of the bus and I sat in front. It took me 2.5 hours until the bus was full. And we went. We went out. I passed the French customs, passed to the British customs. They looked at the passports. And that British officer looked up at the racks. He pointed 3 suitcases. If he had pointed my suitcase, I won't even say it's mine. Pointed, I was so glad it's not mine. They took it down, they searched it, and we went. Came to Tiberias, I took the suitcase with the Egged bus, and I went to Haifa. From Haifa, I went to the house where they maquilted me. I took the mustache out, took that, I put my British uniform, I was in the army, my army uniform on, And I took a bus to Tel Aviv. I brought it to my contact. He said, we'll meet together, we'll meet tomorrow. I said, look, I can't meet together with you tomorrow here because I'm in the British Army. I can't every day go like this. I said, okay, next week, I told him I'll come. I came next week. He said, the headquarters so happy that you brought that thing. He's going to give you a present. I said, since when in the underground I give presents? I made operations more dangerous than this one. What do you mean he's going to give you a present? He says, yes, they're going to give you a present. Okay, what I brought? He said, you brought a broadcasting station. And what's the present? They want to install it to your parents' house. That's the present. I said, I'm not at home so many times. Come to my parents if they decide, okay? They accept it. And from the house of my parents, they were broadcasting the voice of Zion, called Zion al-Lochemet, called Zion al-Mitzvah. And now when somebody goes by the house, by my parents' house, there is a note there saying at the 4th floor, at the apartment of Tzipora and David Nahmias, that being the broadcasting service, and from here, the underground broadcasted to the nation in Zion. And there is a big notice there with that thing. And that's the present that he gave me that I posted in my parents' house. I'm here a teller, a teller, I tell. No, I don't tour, there's the girls, I train the girls, they tour, I tell them only the stories, how the Irgun came out and the operations I took part. I've got here, I show them how I looked when I was when I went to the British Army, 14 and a half years old, and how I was jailed with a picture wanted and all that. In Hebrew, that's ish, a witness.